Lesson 1D, Isotopes. Recall the subatomic particles. Protons have a mass of 1, a charge of +1, and reside in the nucleus. Neutrons have a mass of 1, a charge of 0, and are also found in the nucleus. Electrons are almost massless, have a charge of -1, and travel around the nucleus in a path called orbitals or shells. From last lesson, we saw that if we change the number of protons, the element changes. This is because the number of protons in an atom's nucleus determines what type of element it is. Hydrogen has 1 proton, helium 2, lithium has 3 protons, and so on. What would happen if we changed the number of neutrons? Well, remember, neutrons have mass but no charge, so adding neutrons would not change the atom's element. That's only achieved by changing the number of protons. Rather, it would only change its mass. Let's look at this atom for an example. It has 8 protons, 8 neutrons, and 8 electrons. 8 proton gives the atom an atomic number of 8, which makes it oxygen. This is an oxygen atom. It has 8 electrons, which means it's neutral or elemental. It has 8 neutrons, which when combined with the 8 protons means the mass number of this oxygen is 16. Is this the most common mass for oxygen? When we look at the periodic table, we see the weighted average mass, also known as the atomic mass, and for oxygen, it is 16.0. This makes oxygen with a mass number of 16 the most common type of oxygen. Let's look at this next atom. It has 8 protons, 8 electrons, but it has 9 neutrons. Since it has 8 protons, it must be oxygen as well, and since the number of protons equals the number of electrons, it is also elemental. The only difference is this oxygen atom has a mass number of 17. This is from its 8 protons and 9 neutrons. We call these two versions of oxygen isotopes of oxygen. In fact, there are more oxygen isotopes. This is another example. This oxygen atom has 8 protons, 8 neutrons, but 10 neutrons. That makes the mass number for this isotope of oxygen 18. Here are the 3 isotopes of oxygen: oxygen 16, oxygen 17, and oxygen 18, where the numbers are the mass numbers. Oxygen 16 is the most common isotope or mass, since oxygen's atomic mass, or the weighted average, is 16 on the periodic table. These isotopes can be written in standard isotope notation like this, where the top number is the mass number and the bottom number is the atomic number. Note, they are all oxygen, so they must have the atomic number of 8. Their mass numbers differ only due to the number of neutrons, as electrons have almost no mass, and changing the protons would change the element. Carbon is another example of an element with many isotopes. In fact, carbon has 15 isotopes, but the 3 most common isotopes are carbon-12, carbon-13, and carbon-14. Which of these do you think is the most common isotope of carbon? Well, to answer this question, we need to look at the periodic table. We can see that carbon has an atomic mass of 12. That's its weighted average of all the different isotopes found on Earth. That means carbon-12 is the most common mass for carbon. This carbon has 6 protons, since all carbons have 6 protons, and will have 6 neutrons to make the mass number 12. In summary, changing the number of neutrons in an atom changes its mass. It does not change its charge, since neutrons are neutral. It does not change the number of protons, so it remains the same element. The atom is the same element, but it has a different mass. It has the same number of protons, but has a different number of neutrons.